Chapter 1. The Unseen Hand. The city of Avidali never slept. Beneath the neon glow and the constant hum of life, there were whispers of a hidden force, an elusive entity that operated in the shadows, pulling strings that no one could see. Detective Maria Castillo had seen her share of darkness, but the case she was about to take would lead her deeper into the abyss than ever before. It began with a body, as it often did, but this one was different, displayed like a macabre work of art in the middle of Avondale's busiest square. The victim was a man of wealth and influence, his name synonymous with power. The only clue left behind was a calling card, a single black feather, delicate and foreboding. Maria studied the scene with cold detachment, her mind already spinning with possibilities. The black feather wasn't just a signature, it was a symbol, one that belonged to an organization long thought to be a myth. The Black Flock, a secretive syndicate known only in whispers, its existence denied by law enforcement and feared by the underworld. As Maria delved into the victim's life, she uncovered a web of connections: politicians, corporate magnates, and crime lords, all linked by a common thread: the Black Flock. Each lead was a piece of a puzzle that formed a picture of a city under siege by an invisible enemy. But Maria wasn't one to be intimidated. She had her own shadows, a past that made her relentless in her pursuit of justice. Her investigation took her to the darkest corners of Avidali, from opulent penthouses to grimy alleyways. Along the way, she encountered a gallery of characters: a disgraced journalist with nothing to lose, a hacker who lived off the grid, and a former informant now hunted by the very people he once betrayed. Each had a piece of the puzzle, but the more Maria uncovered, the more dangerous her mission became. As she closed in on the truth, Maria found herself the target of the very forces she sought to expose. The Black Flock was watching her every move, and they didn't take kindly to intruders. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that this was no ordinary case. It was a war, and in this war, the lines between justice and vengeance, truth and lies, were blurred beyond recognition. In the end, Maria would have to make a choice, whether to follow the law or to step into the shadows herself, because in Avidali, justice was a game played in the dark, and the only way to win was to understand the mind of a criminal. But in a city where everyone had a price, could she remain uncorrupted, or would she become the very thing she was fighting against? Chapter 2. The Web Titans. Maria Castillo's instincts told her that the murder in Avidali Square was just the beginning. The body, displayed so publicly, was a message, a challenge to anyone who dared to unravel the mystery of the Black Flock. She could feel the weight of the city's collective anxiety pressing down on her as she navigated the crowded streets back to the precinct. The citizens of Avidali were blissfully unaware of the war brewing beneath their feet. Back at the precinct, Maria gathered her team: Detective Sam Torres, a grizzled veteran with a sharp eye for detail, and Officer Elena Vasquez, a young but capable rookie with a knack for technology. Together, they reviewed the evidence, but there wasn't much to go on. No fingerprints, no witnesses, just the black feather. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, Sam muttered, his brow furrowed as he examined the photos. Clean, precise, and no trace left behind. This wasn't just a murder, it was a statement. Maria nodded. The victim, Jonathan Riley, wealthy, influential, but clean on paper. No criminal record, no known enemies. Yet, he's the first known target of the Black Flock. Why him? Elena, who had been typing furiously on her laptop, looked up. I've been digging into Riley's financials. He was involved in several high-profile real estate deals, but there is something off. A few of his transactions were with shell companies, all leading back to the same offshore account. I think he was laundering money for someone. Maria's eyes narrowed. Someone like the Black Flock? Possibly, Elena replied. But these transactions are buried deep. Whoever set this up knew how to cover their tracks. Keep digging, Maria instructed. We need to find out who he was working for. If we can connect Riley to the Black Flock, we might be able to identify their next target. As Elena continued her work, Maria and Sam headed to Riley's penthouse, hoping to find more clues. The building was a fortress, high security, top-of-the-line surveillance, yet somehow, the killer had managed to bypass it all. Inside, the penthouse was a display of wealth, but to Maria, it felt more like a gilded cage. The place was immaculate, almost sterile, but there was something about the orderliness that didn't sit right with her. "Look at this," Sam said, pointing to a bookshelf. "Every book is perfectly aligned, no dust, no wear and tear. It's like no one ever actually lived here." Maria ran her fingers along the spines of the books. "This place is staged. Whoever lived here was hiding something." They searched the penthouse thoroughly, but it wasn't until Maria stood by the window, looking out over the city, that she noticed a small discrepancy. The glass panel was slightly ajar, just enough to let in a sliver of cool air. She knelt down, examining the latch, and found a tiny scratch barely noticeable, but enough to suggest that someone had tampered with it. "Sam, look at this," she called out. Sam joined her, peering closely at the latch. "Could be the point of entry, but how did they get up here without being seen? We're on the 20th floor." Maria's mind raced. The precision of the murder, the careful staging of the scene, it all pointed to a professional. "Someone who's done this before," she murmured. They knew exactly how to avoid detection. Before they could investigate further, Maria's phone buzzed. It was Elena. "Detective, I found something. Riley was involved in a charity organization, but it's a front. The organization's board members are all aliases, and I trace one of them back to a known associate of Ozu Murakami." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. The pieces were starting to come together. Riley wasn't just a random target. He was connected to the Yakuza, specifically to the man who ran the most feared syndicate in Tokyo, and if Murakami was involved, the stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined. "Good work, Elena," Maria said, her voice steady. "We need to move fast. If Murakami is pulling the strings, we're dealing with a dangerous enemy. But we have something he doesn't know. His secret is out, and we're coming for him." As they left the penthouse, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The city had eyes everywhere, and in a game like this, trust was a rare commodity. She knew that to bring down the Black Flock, she would need to think like them, to anticipate their moves before they made them. But with every step forward, the web of deception tightened around her, and in Avidali, the shadows were always one step ahead. Chapter 3: The Gathering Storm. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city as Maria sat in her dimly lit office, piecing together the fragments of the case. The connection to Ozu Murakami, the elusive leader of the Yakuza, had added a new layer of complexity to the investigation. Murakami was known for his ruthlessness and his ability to stay several steps ahead of his enemies, but Maria was determined to catch him, no matter the cost. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Sam Torres stepped in, his expression grim. "You're going to want to see this." Maria followed him to the operations room, where a map of Avidali was spread across the table. Red dots marked several locations around the city, each one a known front for organized crime. Elena stood by the screen, her fingers tapping rapidly on the keyboard. "We've been tracking Murakami's movements through his associates," Elena explained. "These locations are all connected to his network, but there's something else, a pattern." Maria studied the map, her eyes narrowing. The locations formed a rough circle, with one point at the center, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. "The warehouse," Maria said slowly. "What's there?" "Not much, officially," Sam replied. "It was shut down years ago, but it's been rumored to be a meeting place for high-profile criminals. If Murakami's involved, that place could be a hub for the Black Flock's operations. We need to get in there," Maria decided, but quietly. "If Murakami suspects we're onto him, he'll vanish, and we'll lose our chance." Sam nodded, already thinking ahead. "We'll need backup, but not too many. We can't risk spooking them." As the team prepared for the raid, Maria couldn't shake the feeling of unease. This was the closest they'd come to Murakami, but it also meant they were walking into his territory. Every step had to be precise, every move calculated. One mistake, and the entire operation could fall apart. The night air was thick with tension as Maria, Sam, and a small team of officers approached the warehouse. They moved in silence, their footsteps muffled by the gravel underfoot. The warehouse loomed ahead, its darkened windows giving no hint of what lay inside. Maria signaled for the team to spread out, covering all exits. She and Sam approached the main entrance, where the rusted metal door stood slightly ajar. With a nod to each other, they slipped inside, guns drawn. The interior of the warehouse was cavernous, with towering stacks of crates casting eerie shadows. The smell of damp and decay hung in the air, and the silence was almost deafening. Maria's senses were on high alert as she moved deeper into the darkness, every creak of the floorboards echoing like a gunshot. They reached the center of the warehouse, where a large clearing had been left open. In the middle of it stood a lone table, a single light bulb hanging above it, flickering weakly. On the table was a black briefcase, its surface polished to a sinister gleam. Maria approached the table cautiously, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement. The briefcase was out of place in the otherwise abandoned warehouse, almost as if it had been left there intentionally. "What do you think?" Sam whispered, his voice barely audible. Maria hesitated, then slowly reached out to open the briefcase. The latch clicked open with a soft, metallic sound, and as the lid lifted, Maria's breath caught in her throat. Inside the briefcase was another black feather, identical to the one left at the crime scene. But this time, there was more, a small, intricately carved dragon figurine, its eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. Next to it was a folded piece of paper. Maria unfolded the paper, her heart pounding in her chest. The message was simple, written in elegant, precise handwriting. "The dragon awakens. Trust no one." Maria's blood ran cold as she read the words. The message was clear. Murakami knew they were coming, and he was taunting them. But the warning at the end was even more disturbing. Trust no one. Had the Black Flock infiltrated their ranks? Was there a mole among them? Before Maria could process the implications, the silence was shattered by the sound of gunfire. The team outside was under attack. "Ambush!" Sam shouted, grabbing Maria and pulling her behind. A stack of crates as bullets ricocheted off the metal walls. The warehouse erupted into chaos, the darkness punctuated by the flash of gunfire and the shouts of officers scrambling for cover. Maria crouched low, her mind racing. The attack had been perfectly timed, as if the enemy knew exactly when and where they would strike. Someone had betrayed them. "We need to fall back," Sam yelled over the noise. "We're sitting ducks in here." Maria nodded, adrenaline surging through her veins. She signaled to the team, and they began a tactical retreat, firing back at the unseen assailants as they moved towards the exit. The gunfire was relentless, and Maria could feel the sting of near misses as bullets whizzed past her. Just as they reached the door, an explosion rocked the warehouse, throwing Maria to the ground. The force of the blast rattled her bones, and for a moment, everything went black. When she came to, the warehouse was in flames, the heat searing her skin. Sam was beside her, helping her to her feet, his face grim but determined. "We have to go now," he urged, pulling her towards the exit. With one last glance at the burning warehouse, Maria staggered out into the night. The team regrouped outside, battered and bruised but alive. The ambush had been a disaster, and they had nothing to show for it except more questions. As they drove back to the precinct, the words on the note echoed in Maria's mind. Trust no one. The storm was coming, and Maria knew that they were far from ready. The Black Flock had made their move, and now it was her turn. But first, she needed to find the traitor in their midst before the shadows consumed them all. Chapter 4: The Tokyo Connection. The next morning, Maria sat in her office, staring at the dragon figurine now sealed in an evidence bag. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind: Murakami's taunt, the ambush, the chaos that followed. She could still smell the smoke from the warehouse fire, and the thought of how close they had come to disaster made her skin crawl. The message was clear. The Black Flock was not just a gang. They were an organization that thrived on fear and manipulation. They had eyes everywhere, and someone had betrayed the task force. As Maria mulled over her next move, her phone buzzed. It was an encrypted call, a secure line only used for high-priority communications. She answered it, and a familiar voice greeted her. "Detective Carter, I trust you've received the package?" Maria's eyes narrowed. "You have some nerve, Kato." Kato Yamamoto, the elusive thief she had chased for years, was now on the other end of the line. He was a ghost, slipping in and out of the criminal underworld with ease. And now he was tied up in the mess with Murakami. "You should be thanking me, Carter. If it weren't for my warning, you and your team would be dead." Maria's jaw clenched. "Your warning? You call leaving a cryptic note and a feather in a warehouse filled with explosives a warning?" Kato's voice was calm, almost amused. "You found the note, didn't you? And you're still alive. My part is done. Now, if you want to take down Murakami, you'll need to trust me." "Trust you?" Maria scoffed. "You've spent years making a fool out of every law enforcement agency on the planet. Why would I trust you now?" "Because, Detective, Murakami isn't just another crime lord. He's after something much bigger, and if he succeeds, the world as you know it will change forever. I have no interest in seeing that happen." Maria hesitated. As much as she loathed Kato, she knew he wasn't one to make empty threats. If he was reaching out to her, it meant that the situation was far more dangerous than she had anticipated. "What do you know?" she asked, her voice low. "Meet me in Tokyo. I'll give you what you need to take down Murakami, but you have to come alone. No backup, no surveillance. Just you and me." Maria's instinct screamed that this was a trap, but something in Kato's tone made her pause. There was an urgency there, a rare hint of desperation that she hadn't heard before. "I'll be there," she finally said. "But if this is a setup, I swear I'll hunt you down myself." Kato chuckled. "Looking forward to it, Detective. I'll send you the coordinates. Don't be late." The line went dead, leaving Maria with a sinking feeling in her gut. She knew she couldn't trust Kato, but he was right about one thing: Murakami was playing a different game, and they were running out of time to stop him. Half a world away, in the heart of Tokyo, Detective Aiko Tanaka was reviewing surveillance footage from the British Museum heist. The images were grainy, the figures blurry, but there was no mistaking the precision of the operation. This wasn't just a simple theft, it was a military-grade operation. Aiko leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She had been following Ozu Murakami's trail for years, but this was the boldest move he had ever made. The theft of the Dragon's Eye was a statement, a declaration of war against anyone who stood in his way. A knock on her office door interrupted her thoughts. It was her mentor, Kazuo Tanaka, a retired detective with decades of experience. His sharp eyes still held the fire of a man who had seen too much but wasn't ready to give up the fight. "You're burning the midnight oil again," Kazuo remarked as he stepped into the room. "I don't have much choice," Aiko replied, rubbing her temples. "Murakami's made his move, and we're barely keeping up." Kazuo studied her for a moment, then placed a file on her desk. "I've been looking into some old contacts. This might help." Aiko opened the file and found a list of names, all of them connected to Murakami's operations. At the top of the list was one name that stood out: Kato Yamamoto. "Kato, the master thief?" Aiko asked, surprised. Kazuo nodded. "He's been spotted in Tokyo, and word is he's working against Murakami. If he's involved, it means things are about to get messy." Aiko frowned. Why would Kato go against Murakami? They've always operated in the same circles. "That's what worries me," Kazuo said, his voice heavy with concern. "Kato's never been one to pick sides, but if he's turned against Murakami, it means there's something much bigger at play." Aiko's mind raced as she connected the dots. Kato's involvement, the theft of the Dragon's Eye, and the sudden surge in Yakuza activity, it all pointed to a larger conspiracy. But what was the endgame? "I need to find Kato," Aiko decided. "If he has information, he could be the key to bringing down Murakami." Kazuo placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression serious. Be careful, Aiko. Kato is dangerous, and Murakami is even more so. Don't underestimate them. I won't, Aiko promised. But I have to see this through. As she prepared to track down Kato, Aiko couldn't shake the feeling that the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. But with each new revelation came greater danger, and she knew that the line between ally and enemy was becoming increasingly blurred. Maria arrived in Tokyo the next day, her senses on high alert as she navigated the bustling streets. The coordinates Kato had sent led her to a quiet tea house in a secluded part of the city. It was the perfect place for a clandestine meeting, away from prying eyes. She stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the room. Kato was already there, seated at a low table near the back, sipping tea as if he didn't have a care in the world. You're late, he remarked as Maria approached. I'm here, aren't I? Maria shot back, taking a seat across from him. Kato smirked, his eyes glinting with mischief. Fair enough, tea. Maria waved away the offer. Let's skip the pleasantries. You said you had information on Murakami. Start talking. Kato leaned back, his demeanor relaxed but his eyes sharp. Murakami is no ordinary crime boss. He's been amassing power for years, not just in the Yakuza, but in the global underworld. The Dragon's Eye is the key to his plans. Maria frowned. The Dragon's Eye? It's just a legend. An ancient artifact, sure, but nothing more. Kato's smirk faded, replaced by a more serious expression. That's where you're wrong. The Dragon's Eye isn't just an artifact, it's a symbol, a token of power among the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. Whoever possesses it can command respect, fear, and, more importantly, loyalty. Murakami plans to use it to unite the Yakuza and the shadows under his rule, creating an alliance that could control the global black market. Maria absorbed the information, her mind racing. And you? What's your angle in all of this? Why help us stop him? Kato looked her in the eye, his expression unreadable. I've spent my life in the shadows. Maria, I've seen what men like Murakami can do when they have too much power. I'm not interested in being ruled by a madman. And besides, he added with a hint of a smile, I enjoy the game. This is just my way of tipping the scales. Maria wasn't sure whether to trust him, but she didn't have much choice. If what Kato said was true, then Murakami's plans were far more dangerous than she had anticipated. All right, she said finally. What's our next move? Kato's eyes gleamed with anticipation. We need to disrupt Murakami's alliance. Without the shadows, he won't have the global reach he needs to solidify his power. I've already set the wheels in motion. There's a shipment arriving at the docks. Tonight, arms and drugs meant to secure a deal between the Yakuza and the shadows. We're going to intercept it. Maria raised an eyebrow. Just the two of us? Kato chuckled. Not quite. I've brought in some help, but you'll need to meet them first. Before Maria could ask who this help was, the door to the tea house slid open, and a woman stepped inside. She was dressed in black, her movements graceful and controlled, her eyes sharp and calculating. This is Mia Chen, Kato introduced her. She's a hacker, the best in the business. She's been gathering intel on Murakami and the shadows for months. Mia gave Maria a brief nod, her expression serious. I've been monitoring their communications. The deal is set for midnight at the docks. If we move fast, we can intercept the shipment and cripple their alliance before it even begins. Maria studied Mia, then looked back at Kato. This was a risky move, relying on a thief and a hacker, but they were her best chance at stopping Murakami. Let's do it, Maria said, determination in her voice. The Tokyo docks were eerily quiet as midnight approached, the air thick with tension. Maria, Kato, and Mia crouched behind a stack of shipping containers, watching as the Yakuza and the shadows began unloading the shipment from a large cargo ship. Maria's heart pounded as she assessed the situation. There were more men than she had anticipated, all heavily armed, but they had the element of surprise on their side. Stick to the plan, Kato whispered. We take out the guards quietly, then Mia disables the ship's controls. Once they're trapped, we hit them hard. Maria nodded, her grip tightening on her gun. This was their chance to strike a major blow against Murakami. Kato moved first, slipping through the shadows like a ghost. Maria followed, her movements precise and controlled. Together, they silently took out the guards, their bodies slumping to the ground without a sound. Mia was already at the control panel, her fingers flying over the keys. I've disabled the ship's engine. They're not going anywhere. Good, Kato replied. Now, we finish this. With the guards down and the ship immobilized, Maria and Kato moved in, guns blazing. The dock erupted into chaos as the Yakuza and the shadows scrambled to defend themselves. But it was too late. Maria's team was relentless, cutting down their enemies with precision. Amidst the chaos, Maria spotted the leader of the shadows, Tommy the Viper O'Connor, trying to make a run for it. She sprinted after him, her heart pounding as she closed the distance. Stop right there, she shouted, leveling her gun at him. O'Connor froze, turning to face her with a sneer. You don't know what you're getting into, lady. Murakami's just the beginning. Maria didn't flinch. That may be, but you're not going to live to see it. O'Connor lunged at her, but Maria was faster. She fired a single shot, hitting him square in the chest. He collapsed to the ground, the life draining from his eyes. As the last of the shadows were subdued, Maria looked around at the aftermath. The shipment had been secured, the alliance disrupted, but the victory felt hollow. Murakami was still out there, and this was just one battle in a much larger war. Kato appeared at her side, his expression unreadable. Well done, detective, but this is far from over. Maria nodded, her resolve hardening. I know. Murakami's still out there, and I'm not stopping until he's brought down. Kato smiled faintly. Good, because the real game is just beginning. As they left the docks, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the danger they were facing. Murakami was a master of manipulation, and he wouldn't take this setback lightly. But with Kato and Mia on her side, Maria knew she had a fighting chance. The Tokyo connection had given her a glimpse into the true scale of the threat, and now, she was more determined than ever to stop Murakami before it was too late. Chapter 5: The London Connection. The lights of London flickered, like distant stars as the private jet touched down on the tarmac. Maria gazed out of the window, her mind still racing from the events in Tokyo. The adrenaline from the raid had subsided, leaving her with a mix of exhaustion and determination. Murakami had to be stopped, and the next piece of the puzzle was here in London. As she descended the steps of the jet, Maria was greeted by the brisk London air and a familiar face. Standing at the edge of the runway, dressed in a tailored coat that barely concealed the bulk of his frame, was Detective Inspector James Carter. His stern expression softened as he saw her, and he stepped forward, extending a hand. Maria, Carter said, his deep voice carrying a note of warmth. Good to see you again, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Maria shook his hand firmly. Likewise, James, thanks for meeting me on such short notice. Carter waved off the gratitude. This is bigger than either of us, and the sooner we stop Murakami, the better. I've already set up a secure base of operations for us. We're moving fast on this. Good, Maria replied, falling into step beside him as they headed toward a waiting car. Because things are about to get a lot more complicated. As they drove through the city, Carter briefed Maria on the situation. O'Connor's death has left a power vacuum in the shadows, but it's also created chaos. Without their leader, the gang is splintering. Some are scrambling for control, others are looking to jump ship, and that's where Murakami comes in. He's using the confusion to consolidate his influence here in London. Maria frowned. He's already making moves? Yes, Carter confirmed. There's been a sudden influx of Yakuza activity in the city. Murakami's lieutenants are here, and they're not just trying to fill the void left by O'Connor, they're planning something bigger. The car pulled up in front of an old, nondescript building in the heart of London. Carter led Maria inside, down a flight of stairs to a secure, underground bunker that had been converted into a command center. The room was filled with computer monitors, maps of the city, and a team of agents working around the clock. This is where we'll be coordinating our efforts, Carter explained. We've got eyes on the ground and informants feeding us intel, but we're up against the clock. Murakami's lieutenants are planning a meeting tonight, location unknown. If we can find them, we might be able to disrupt his operations here before they get any further. Maria scanned the room, her mind already formulating a plan. What about O'Connor's former allies? Any chance they might turn on Murakami? Carter nodded. It's possible. Without O'Connor, the shadows are fractured. Some of them might be willing to cut a deal if it means staying in power. But it's a risky move. They're just as likely to stab us in the back. We'll take that risk, Maria said decisively. We need all the leverage we can get. At that moment, Mia entered the room, her fingers flying over the keyboard of her laptop as she approached them. I've been tracking communications between Murakami's people. They're using encrypted channels, but I've managed to intercept a few key messages. They're definitely planning something big, and they're using a safe house in South London as a staging ground. Maria glanced at Carter. South London. That's close to the docks. They could be using the same routes we intercepted in Tokyo. Carter nodded. Exactly what I was thinking. We need to hit that safe house before they have a chance to regroup. Mia pulled up a map on one of the monitors, highlighting the location of the safe house. It's heavily guarded, but if we can get inside, we might be able to gather intel on Murakami's plans. I've also got a lead on one of the lieutenants, Ryu Sato. He's been in contact with several key players in the shadows. If we can flip him, it could turn the tide in our favor. Maria considered the options, weighing the risks. We need to move fast. Carter, assemble a team. Mia, I want you on comms. Let's take the safe house and find out exactly what Murakami is planning. The streets of South London were eerily quiet as the team approached the safe house. The night was cold, and a thin mist clung to the ground, shrouding the alleyways in a ghostly fog. Maria led the team, her senses heightened, every sound amplified in the stillness of the night. Carter moved beside her, his gun drawn and his eyes scanning the area. Behind them, a small group of highly trained operatives followed, their movements silent and precise. Mia's voice crackled in Maria's earpiece. You're approaching the target. 3 guards at the front entrance, 2 on the roof. Cameras are on a loop, but you've got a 10-minute window before the next patrol. Maria signaled to the team, and they split into 2 groups. Carter led one group to flank the building, while Maria and the others approached the front. With swift, practiced movements, Maria neutralized the guards at the entrance, her silenced pistol ensuring they didn't make a sound. The team moved quickly, breaching the door and entering the safe house. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The dimly lit rooms were filled with maps, weapons, and documents detailing Murakami's operations. Maria's heart raced as she sifted through the information, trying to piece together the plan. Carter's voice came through her earpiece. We've secured the perimeter. Sato's not here, but we've found something. You need to see this. Maria made her way to the basement, where Carter was waiting. He was standing over a large, open crate filled with what looked like ancient artifacts, each one meticulously packed and labeled. What the hell is this? Maria asked, her brow furrowing. Carter handed her a document. It's a shipment manifest. These artifacts are scheduled to be moved tomorrow night. Destination, Tokyo. Maria scanned the document, her mind racing. He's moving the artifacts back to Tokyo, but why? Mia's voice cut in, urgent. I've found something else. There's a connection between these artifacts and the Dragon's Eye. Murakami's been gathering relics from different parts of the world, each one linked to an ancient legend about the Eye's power. If he's planning to return them to Tokyo, he might be trying to activate something big. Maria's blood ran cold as the pieces began to fall into place. He's not just after power. He's after something more, something ancient, something that could change the balance of power in the underworld forever. Carter's expression hardened. Then we can't let him succeed. We need to stop that shipment. Maria nodded, her resolve firm. We will. But first, we need to find Sato. He's the key to figuring out Murakami's endgame. Mia, get me everything you can on his whereabouts. We're running out of time. As they regrouped, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something much larger than they had anticipated. The stakes were higher than ever, and Murakami's plans were far more dangerous than they had imagined. But Maria wasn't about to back down. She had come too far, and the fight was only just beginning. Chapter 6: The Dragon's Power. The following night, the Thames River reflected the dim lights of the city as Maria and Carter prepared for the next phase of their mission. The discovery in the safe house had revealed more than they had bargained for. Murakami's obsession with the dragon's eye wasn't just about power or wealth, it was about something far more dangerous. In the briefing room, Maria stood before a map of Tokyo and London, the two cities connected by a web of red strings, representing the routes Murakami was using to move the ancient artifacts. Each relic had its own history, its own legend, all tied to the dragon's eye. The thought of what could happen if Murakami succeeded in bringing them together sent a shiver down her spine. Mia's voice pulled Maria from her thoughts. We've located Sato. He's holed up in an old warehouse near the docks. It's heavily guarded, but if we can get to him, we might be able to extract the information we need. Maria glanced at Carter, who nodded in agreement. We need to move quickly. If Sato knows Murakami's endgame, he's our best shot at stopping whatever he's planning. Carter's voice was steady, but Maria could sense the underlying tension. They both knew this mission was becoming more dangerous with every step, but there was no turning back now. The warehouse district was a labyrinth of dark alleys and towering buildings, the perfect place for someone like Sato to hide. The night was thick with fog, adding to the eerie silence that surrounded the team as they approached their target. Maria and Carter moved silently through the shadows, their weapons ready. Mia guided them through the maze of corridors via their earpieces, her voice calm and precise. You're close. Sato's in the main office on the second floor. There are guards posted at every entrance, so you'll need to take them out quietly. The team split into two groups, Maria leading one while Carter took the other. They moved in tandem, taking down the guards with swift, silent precision. Maria's heart raced as they neared the office, her mind focused on the task ahead. They reached the office door, and Maria signaled for the team to breach. The door flew open, and they stormed inside, weapons drawn. Sato was waiting, his expression a mix of fear and defiance as he reached for a gun on the desk. Don't even think about it, Maria warned, her voice cold as steel. Sato froze, his hand hovering over the weapon. We just want to talk. Sato's eyes flicked to Carter, then back to Maria. You think you can stop Murakami? You have no idea what you're dealing with. Then enlighten us, Carter said, stepping forward. What is Murakami planning? What's his endgame? Sato hesitated, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. But there was none. He was trapped, and he knew it. He's bringing the artifacts together, Sato finally said, his voice low. They're all connected to the dragon's eye, part of an ancient ritual. Murakami believes that if he can activate the eye's power, he'll gain control over the entire underworld, maybe even more. Maria's mind raced as she processed the information. A ritual? What kind of power are we talking about? Sato shook his head, fear evident in his eyes. No one knows for sure. The legends speak of immense power, enough to destroy entire cities if used incorrectly. Murakami thinks he can harness it, control it, but if he's wrong. Maria exchanged a glance with Carter. They were dealing with something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. This wasn't just about stopping a crime. Lord, this was about preventing a potential disaster. We need to stop him, Maria said, her voice firm. Where is the ritual supposed to take place? Sato hesitated again, his gaze flickering between them. Tokyo. He's moving the artifacts to an underground temple. It's been hidden for centuries, but Murakami found it. He plans to perform the ritual during the next full moon. That's only a few days away, Carter said, his tone urgent. We don't have much time. Maria turned to Sato, her expression hard. You're coming with us. You're going to help us stop this, whether you like it or not. Sato swallowed hard, nodding reluctantly. I'll help you, but you need to understand if we fail, there's no telling what will happen. Murakami's playing with forces that should never be disturbed. Back at the command center, Maria, Carter, and Mia pored over the information Sato had provided. The ritual, the artifacts, the underground temple. It all pointed to something far more ancient and powerful than they had imagined. We need to get to Tokyo as soon as possible, Maria said, her voice determined. We need to stop this ritual before it's too late. Carter nodded in agreement. I'll contact Interpol and the local authorities. We'll need all the help we can get to pull this off. Mia, meanwhile, was focused on her computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard. I'm pulling up satellite images of Tokyo, trying to locate the temple. If it's been hidden for centuries, it's not going to be easy to find. Sato, who had been sitting silently in the corner, finally spoke up. There's an old map. It was passed down through the Yakuza for generations. Murakami has it. He used it to find the temple. Without that map, finding the temple will be nearly impossible. Maria's eyes narrowed. Then we need to get that map. Do you know where Murakami is keeping it? Sato nodded. Yes, he has a private vault in Tokyo, heavily guarded. But if you can get inside, you'll find the map. It's the only way. Looks like we're headed back to Tokyo, Carter said, his tone resolute. Maria nodded, her mind already racing with plans. The stakes were higher than ever, and the clock was ticking. But they had no choice. They had to stop Murakami, no matter the cost. As they prepared for the next leg of their mission, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something cataclysmic. The dragon's eye wasn't just a symbol of power, it was a weapon, one that could change the world forever. But Maria was determined to ensure that it would never fall into the wrong hands. The battle wasn't over yet, and she was ready for whatever came next. Chapter 7. The Hidden Lair. The flight to Tokyo was tense and silent, each team member lost in their thoughts as the city lights blinked far below. Maria and Carter reviewed their strategy, going over every detail. As they prepared to face the most dangerous leg of their mission, Sato had given them the information they needed, but the risk was higher than ever. Murakami's private vault, hidden beneath layers of security and armed guards, was their only chance of retrieving the map. Without it, the ancient temple would remain elusive, and Murakami's ritual would proceed unchallenged. As they touched down in Tokyo, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to the impending danger that lurked beneath its surface. Mia, their ever-reliable hacker, had already set up a temporary command center in a safe house. She greeted them with a brief nod, her eyes glued to multiple screens displaying the vault's blueprints, security footage, and encrypted communications. We don't have much time, Mia said, her voice clipped as she relayed the situation. Murakami's increased security since the heist. He knows we're closing in, and he's not taking any chances. Then we can't afford to either, Maria replied, her tone firm. We move in fast and quiet. Get the map and get out. No unnecessary risks. Carter adjusted his gear, his expression unreadable as he prepared for the mission ahead. We're going into the lion's den. Let's make sure we don't become his next meal. The vault was located beneath a seemingly innocuous skyscraper in the heart of Tokyo's financial district, but beneath its sleek, modern exterior was a fortress designed to keep intruders out and secrets buried. The team approached under the cover of darkness, their movements precise and coordinated. Maria led the way, her senses on high alert as they bypassed the building's initial security. Mia's voice guided them through their earpieces, directing them to a hidden service elevator that led to the underground levels. Be careful, Mia warned. This elevator's monitored by biometric scanners. I've overridden the system, but it won't last long. Maria swiped the keycard Sato had provided, and the elevator doors slid open. They descended in silence, the air thick with tension. As the doors opened to the underground corridor, Maria signaled for the team to move out. The vault was housed within a labyrinth of concrete tunnels, each turn more disorienting than the last. The hum of distant machinery and the occasional flicker of fluorescent lights added to the eerie atmosphere. But the team pressed on, their mission clear in their minds. At last, they reached the outer chamber of the vault, where a reinforced steel door stood as the final barrier between them and the map. Two heavily armed guards flanked the entrance, their eyes scanning the area with military precision. Maria motioned for the team to take positions. In a flash, they moved, subduing the guards before they could react. Carter attached a small explosive device to the door, and with a soft click, it was blown open, revealing the vault's interior. Inside, the room was filled with rows of safety deposit boxes, each one likely holding treasures worth a fortune. But Maria's focus was on the small pedestal at the center of the room, where a glass case housed the map they sought. Maria approached the case, her breath catching in her throat. The map was ancient, its parchment worn and fragile, but the intricate symbols and markings were still visible. This was the key to finding the temple, to stopping Murakami before it was too late. Just as Maria reached for the case, alarms blared, the sudden noise piercing the silence. "We've been compromised." Mia's voice crackled through their earpieces. "You need to get out of there now." The team sprang into action, Maria securing the map while Carter and the others prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The sound of footsteps echoed through the tunnels. As Murakami's forces descended upon them, they fought their way out, each encounter more desperate than the last. Bullets flew, and the air filled with the sharp scent of gunpowder as the team battled through the chaos. Maria kept the map close, knowing that it was their only hope. As they neared the surface, the situation became even more dire. Reinforcements had arrived, and the exit was swarming with armed men. Maria and Carter exchanged a glance, silently agreeing on their next move. "Cover me," Maria said, her voice steady despite the danger. "I'll get the map to safety." Carter nodded, his face grim. "We'll hold them off. Go!" Maria sprinted through the corridor, the map clutched tightly in her hands. Behind her, she heard the sounds of gunfire and shouted orders as Carter and the team engaged Murakami's men. She reached the service elevator just as the doors opened, and Mia's anxious voice filled her ears. "Get in. I've got the elevator locked down for now, but they're trying to override it." Maria barely made it inside before the door slid shut, the elevator lurching upward as she ascended to the surface. Her heart pounded in her chest, adrenaline surging through her veins as she clutched the map to her chest. The elevator doors opened to the street level, and Maria stepped out into the night, the city lights flickering around her. She glanced back, knowing that Carter and the others were still fighting their way out, but she had the map, they had a chance. Hours later, back at the safe house, the atmosphere was somber. Carter and the team had returned, bruised but alive. The mission had been more dangerous than any of them had anticipated, but they had succeeded. Maria spread the map out on the table, its intricate details illuminated by the soft glow of the lamps. The ancient temple was marked with symbols she couldn't fully understand, but the location was clear. They had found the temple, the place where Murakami planned to perform the ritual. "We did it," Carter said, his voice laced with exhaustion. "But this is just the beginning." Maria nodded, her gaze fixed on the map. "We have the location, but we need to move fast. Murakami won't wait. He'll be ready for us, and we'll be ready for him," Mia added, her fingers already flying over the keyboard as she prepared for the next phase of the mission. As the team regrouped and planned their next move, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The final showdown was approaching, and the stakes had never been higher. But one thing was clear, they couldn't let Murakami succeed. The dragon's eye, the ritual, the ancient power, it all had to be stopped, no matter the cost. Chapter 8. The final confrontation. The map lay before them, revealing the hidden location of the temple, where Murakami planned to perform his ritual. In the dimly lit room of their safe house, Maria traced the route with her finger, committing every detail to memory. The team gathered around, their faces set with determination. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. Mia's voice cut through the silence, her tone urgent. The temple is located in a remote area in the mountains, deep within the jungle. It's secluded, heavily guarded, and nearly impossible to reach without being detected. We have to be strategic. Carter leaned over the map, his eyes narrowed as he studied the terrain. We'll need to approach from the north, where the jungle is thickest. It'll give us cover, but it's also the most dangerous route. We'll be dealing with the elements, wildlife, and Murakami's men. Maria nodded, her mind already racing through the potential obstacles they'd face. We can't afford to be reckless. This isn't just about stopping Murakami, it's about preventing him from unleashing whatever power the Dragon's Eye holds. We have to be prepared for anything. Kazuo Tanaka, Aiko's mentor and the retired detective who had joined their cause, stepped forward. His eyes were filled with the wisdom of years spent in the field. Murakami is desperate, and that makes him more dangerous than ever. He believes the Dragon's Eye will give him ultimate power, and he won't hesitate to destroy anyone who stands in his way. We must stay focused. Aiko glanced at her mentor, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what they were about to face, but she was resolute, her resolve unshaken. We've come too far to back down now. We'll do whatever it takes to stop him. The team spent the next few hours finalizing their plan, every detail meticulously laid out. Mia worked tirelessly to disable the temple's security systems, while Maria and Carter ensured their equipment was ready for the mission ahead. The air was thick with anticipation, every member of the team acutely aware that this would be their last chance to stop Murakami. As dawn approached, the team prepared to move out. The city of Tokyo was still under the cover of darkness, but the first light of day would soon break through. They geared up, checking their weapons and equipment one final time. Maria looked at each member of her team, a mixture of pride and concern in her eyes. We're doing this for the world, for everything we believe in. Whatever happens out there, remember that we're in this together. We trust each other, and that's what will get us through. Carter gave her a nod, his expression one of steely determination. We'll get through this, we have to. The journey to the temple was grueling. The jungle was dense, the thick canopy of trees blocking out the sun and casting eerie shadows across the forest floor. The team moved silently, their senses heightened as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Every sound, every rustle of leaves, put them on edge. Maria led the way, her every step calculated and precise. Behind her, Aiko kept close, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. Carter and Kazuo brought up the rear, their weapons ready in case of an ambush. As they neared the temple's location, the jungle began to thin, revealing ancient stone steps leading up to a massive structure, partially hidden by the overgrowth. The temple was old, its stone walls worn by time, yet it radiated an undeniable power. The team paused, taking in the sight of the place where their final battle would take place. "This is it," Maria whispered, her voice filled with awe and dread. "The heart of it all." Mia's voice crackled through their earpieces, bringing them back to the present. "You're close to the main entrance, but Murakami's men are patrolling the area. You'll need to be quick and careful. I've taken down as many security measures as I can, but there's only so much I can do from here." "Understood," Maria replied. "We'll handle it from here." The team advanced cautiously, using the thick foliage for cover as they approached the temple's entrance. They could see the guards, now men heavily armed and alert, their eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of intruders. Maria signaled for the team to spread out, each member taking a different position. In a synchronized move, they struck, subduing the guards with swift precision. The path to the temple was clear, but the hardest part was yet to come. They entered the temple, the ancient stone walls echoing with their footsteps. The air was thick with the scent of incense and the oppressive weight of history. As they moved deeper into the structure, they encountered more of Murakami's men, but the team fought with a determination born of necessity. Every step brought them closer to the heart of the temple, where Murakami awaited. At last, they reached the inner sanctum, a vast chamber lit by torches. that flickered ominously against the walls. At the center of the room stood an altar, and on it lay the dragon's eye, its surface glowing with an otherworldly light. Murakami was there, his back turned to them, as he prepared for the ritual that would unleash the artifact's power. Murakami, Maria's voice rang out, echoing through the chamber. He turned to face them, his expression a twisted mixture of triumph and madness. "You're too late, Maria," he sneered. "The power of the dragon's eye will be mine, and with it, I will reshape the world as I see fit. Not if we have anything to say about it," Carter growled, his weapon trained on Murakami. Murakami laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent chills down their spines. "You cannot stop what is destined. The ritual has already begun. Soon, the power will be mine." As he spoke, the ground beneath them trembled, and the air filled with a strange electric energy. The dragon's eye pulsed with a blinding light, and the symbols etched into its surface began to glow. The ritual was in its final stages. Maria knew they had to act quickly. She rushed forward, determined to stop Murakami before it was too late. But as she closed in on him, a barrier of energy erupted around the altar, forcing her back. "Fools!" Murakami roared, his voice rising above the chaos. "The power of the dragon's eye is beyond your comprehension. You cannot stop it now." But Maria refused to give up. She looked at her team, seeing the same determination reflected in their eyes. They had come too far, risked too much, to let Murakami win. Carter and Aiko moved to flank Murakami, their weapons ready, while Mia worked frantically to disable the energy barrier. Kazuo, drawing on his years of experience, searched for any weakness in Murakami's defenses. In the midst of the chaos, Maria felt a surge of energy, a connection to something ancient and powerful. It was as if the dragon's eye was calling to her, recognizing her resolve. With a final burst of strength, she pushed through the barrier, reaching the altar just as Murakami raised his hands to complete the ritual. "No!" Maria shouted, tackling Murakami to the ground. The dragon's eye pulsed violently, the energy within it destabilizing as the ritual was interrupted. The chamber shook, stones crumbling from the walls as the power of the artifact began to spiral out of control. Murakami struggled beneath Maria's grip, his eyes wild with fury. "You've doomed us all. The power of the dragon's eye cannot be contained." But Maria didn't relent. She knew there was only one way to stop the ritual and prevent the catastrophe Murakami had unleashed. With a final, desperate effort, she reached for the dragon's eye, her hand closing around the artifact. The moment her fingers touched its surface, the world seemed to freeze. Time slowed, and a wave of energy surged through her, connecting her to the ancient power of the dragon's eye. She could feel its immense power, its desire to be unleashed, but she also felt its fear, its recognition of the potential for destruction. Maria focused all her willpower, drawing on the strength of her team, her determination to protect the world from the chaos Murakami had sought to create. Slowly, she began to siphon the energy from the artifact, containing its power within herself. The chamber shook violently as the energy dissipated, the ritual unraveling as the dragon's eye's power was absorbed. The barrier around the altar shattered, and the chamber's light dimmed until only the faint glow of the artifact remained. Murakami lay on the ground, defeated, his plans in ruins. He looked up at Maria with a mixture of awe and horror, realizing too late that he had underestimated her resolve. "It's over, Murakami," Maria said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that weighed on her. "The dragon's eye won't be used for destruction. Its power is contained." Carter and Aiko moved in, securing Murakami and ensuring he couldn't escape. Kazuo approached Maria, his eyes filled with pride and relief. "You did it, Maria," he said softly. "You stopped him." Maria nodded, but she knew the battle wasn't over yet. The power she had absorbed from the dragon's eye was still within her, and she could feel its presence, a constant reminder of the responsibility she now carried. As they emerged from the temple, the first light of dawn broke through the dense jungle canopy, casting a golden hue over the ancient stones. The fresh air was a stark contrast to the oppressive, atmosphere they had just left behind. The battle was over, but the consequences of their actions lingered like a shadow. Carter secured Murakami with a pair of handcuffs, ensuring the defeated criminal wouldn't escape. Murakami's face was a mask of defeat, the realization of his failure etched into his features. He glared at Maria, but there was no more defiance in his eyes, only the hollow acceptance of a man who had lost everything. Aiko stood nearby, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts as she processed what they had just accomplished. The weight of their victory was heavy, yet there was also a sense of relief that they had made it out alive. Kazuo, ever the mentor, placed a hand on Aiko's shoulder. "You've proven yourself today, Aiko. You've shown the strength and courage of a true detective." Aiko looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and respect. "Thank you, Kazuo. I couldn't have done it without all of you." Mia's voice crackled through their earpieces, breaking the moment of silence. "I'm bringing in extraction. You've got company heading your way, but don't worry, I've got them on our side." Maria nodded, her focus shifting to the task at hand. The team had completed their mission, but there were still loose ends to tie up. They couldn't leave any traces of the dragon's eye's power in the wrong hands. As they made their way down the temple steps, Maria could feel the energy of the dragon's eye pulsing within her. It was both a blessing and a curse, a power she had to learn to control. She knew she couldn't hold onto it forever. The responsibility was too great, the risk too high, but for now, it was safe. They reached the clearing where they had left their vehicles, and true to her word, Mia had arranged for extraction. A helicopter hovered overhead, ready to whisk them away to safety. The noise of the rotors was deafening, but it was a welcome sound, a sign that their ordeal was finally coming to an end. Carter shoved Murakami into the helicopter, securing him to one of the seats. The criminal mastermind had been rendered powerless, his ambitions shattered by the very thing he sought to control. As the helicopter lifted off, Maria gazed out over the jungle, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just transpired. She could feel the eyes of her team on her, each of them waiting for her to say something, to make sense of what they had just experienced. But Maria remained silent, lost in her thoughts. She knew they had won, but the victory was bittersweet. The dragon's eye was still a threat, and she would have to find a way to deal with it, one that wouldn't put the world at risk. The flight back to civilization was long, the tension in the air heavy despite the fact that they had completed their mission. When they finally touched down, they were met by a contingent of officials, Interpol agents, Japanese law enforcement, and representatives from the British Museum, all eager to debrief them and secure the artifact. Maria stepped out of the helicopter, the dragon's eye clutched tightly in her hand. The officials approached her, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and caution. They knew the power of the artifact she held, and they understood the significance of what had just happened. One of the officials, a stern-looking woman in a dark suit, stepped forward. "Agent Maria Garcia, you and your team have done a great service to the world. The dragon's eye will be taken into secure custody, where it will be studied and hopefully contained." Maria nodded, but she wasn't ready to relinquish the artifact just yet. "I need to make sure it's safe. This power, it's not something to be taken lightly." The official hesitated, but then nodded in understanding. "We'll work with you to ensure that it's handled properly. But for now, let's get you and your team the rest you deserve." The team was ushered away, each of them receiving medical attention and a much-needed break from the intensity of their mission. But even as they rested, Maria's mind was still on the dragon's eye. She knew that her battle with the artifact wasn't over, not by a long shot. Later that evening, after the debriefings were complete and the officials had left, Maria found herself alone in a quiet room, the dragon's eye resting on the table before her. Its glow had dimmed, but the power within it was still palpable. Carter entered the room, his expression one of concern. "Maria, are you sure you're okay? That was a lot to handle." Maria looked up at him, her eyes tired but resolute. "I'm fine, Carter. But this," she gestured to the artifact, "this is something else. I can feel its power, and it's not something that can be easily contained. Carter walked over to her, his hand resting on her shoulder. You don't have to do this alone, Maria. We're a team. We'll figure it out together. Maria smiled, grateful for his support. I know, Carter, and I'm glad you're here, but I can't shake the feeling that this is just the beginning. The Dragon's Eye is dangerous, and there are people out there who would do anything to get their hands on it. Carter nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. We'll keep it safe, Maria, whatever it takes. As they stood there, the weight of the world on their shoulders, Maria knew that their journey was far from over. The Dragon's Eye had been stopped for now, but its power was still out there, waiting to be unleashed, and it was up to them to make sure that never happened. Chapter 9: The Dragon's Legacy. The days stretched into weeks as Maria and her team delved into the search for the remaining artifacts. The world outside continued its normal pace, but for Maria and her team, every moment was a battle against time and shadowy forces. The Dragon's Eye was only the beginning. They knew that each artifact could unlock even greater threats. Mia Chen worked tirelessly, her skills as a hacker proving invaluable. She sifted through countless databases, historical records, and encrypted files, her determination unwavering. Every lead she followed seemed to uncover new layers of mystery, and she was relentless in her pursuit. One evening, as Maria was reviewing the latest report from Mia, she received a call from Aiko. The tone in Aiko's voice was urgent. Maria, I've just uncovered something big. There's a rumor about another artifact linked to the Dragon's Eye. It's said to be hidden in a remote monastery in Nepal. I think we need to investigate. Maria's heart raced. The idea of another artifact so soon was both exciting and daunting. Understood. We'll prepare for departure immediately. I'll brief the team and make sure we're ready to move. Within hours, Maria, Carter, Aiko, and Kazuo were en route to Nepal. The journey was long and arduous, fraught with challenges. As they arrived in Kathmandu, the bustling city was a stark contrast to the serene landscape they were about to enter. The journey to the monastery required a grueling trek through rugged terrain, testing their endurance and resolve. The monastery was perched high on a mountain, surrounded by breathtaking vistas of the Himalayas. It was an ancient structure, its weathered stone walls bearing the marks of centuries. As they approached, Maria couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and reverence for the place. Inside the monastery, they were greeted by the head monk, a venerable figure with a deep wisdom in his eyes. He welcomed them with a calm demeanor, though there was an undercurrent of caution in his gaze. The team was shown to their quarters and informed that the search for the artifact would need to be conducted discreetly, as the monastery was a place of peace and meditation. As night fell, Maria and her team gathered in their quarters to strategize. Mia had already begun her search for any digital records or historical clues about the artifact's location within the monastery. Meanwhile, Aiko and Kazuo scoured through old texts and maps in the monastery's library. Carter, always the practical one, focused on planning their approach. We need to be methodical, he said. If this artifact is here, it's likely well guarded and hidden. We should search for hidden compartments or secret passages. The following morning, the team began their investigation. The monastery's architecture was complex, with hidden alcoves, passageways, and ancient symbols. Each member of the team played a crucial role. Mia deciphered ancient scripts. Kazuo used his knowledge of historical artifacts. Aiko navigated the maze-like structure, and Carter conducted a thorough search of each room and corridor. After hours of searching, Aiko stumbled upon a hidden chamber concealed behind a false wall in the library. Inside, they discovered a small, ornate box covered in intricate carvings. The box was adorned with symbols that matched those found in the texts Maria had studied earlier. Maria carefully opened the box, revealing an artifact that radiated an eerie, otherworldly glow. It was a pendant, its surface engraved with symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint energy. The pendant was clearly connected to the Dragon's Eye, but its true purpose remained a mystery. As they examined the pendant, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The sense of unease grew stronger, and she realized that their presence had likely attracted unwanted attention. That evening, the team gathered in the monastery's courtyard, discussing their findings. Kazuo voiced his concern. This artifact is even more powerful than we anticipated. It could be a key to unlocking the secrets of the dragons. Or it could be something far more dangerous. Maria nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. We need to secure this pendant and return to our base for further analysis. But we must also remain vigilant. If others are aware of our search, we could be in danger. Just then, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, moving swiftly and silently. The figure was cloaked in black, their presence almost ghostly. Maria's instincts kicked in, and she signaled for the team to be on high alert. The figure approached them with a calm, almost mocking demeanor. I see you found what you were looking for, the figure said, their voice smooth and menacing. But you're not the only one searching for these artifacts. You've attracted quite a bit of attention. Maria's heart pounded. She recognized the figure's voice. It was the same voice she had heard in the encrypted messages during their investigation. Who are you? She demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The figure smirked, their eyes glinting with a dangerous gleam. Let's just say I have a vested interest in the artifacts, and I suggest you hand over the pendant before things get unpleasant. Carter stepped forward, his expression hardening. We're not giving up anything. You'll have to take it from us. A tense standoff ensued, the air thick with anticipation. The figure's gaze shifted to the shadows behind them, where other figures began to emerge. The team was surrounded, and it was clear that they were in for a fight. Maria and her team prepared for confrontation, their training and experience coming into play as they readied themselves for the impending conflict. The battle would be fierce, but they were determined to protect the artifact and ensure that it didn't fall into the wrong hands. As the first shadowy figure lunged towards them, Maria knew that their mission was far from over. The dragon's legacy was a heavy burden, and it was up to them to carry it through every challenge, every danger, and every shadow that lay ahead. Chapter 10. The Final Confrontation. The monastery's tranquil courtyard was now a battlefield, its serenity shattered by the clash of wills and weapons. The shadowy figures, clad in black, were relentless. They moved with a deadly grace, their intentions clear. They wanted the pendant, and they would stop at nothing to get it. Maria's team sprang into action. Carter's tactical skills came to the forefront as he coordinated their defense. He directed Mia to a position where she could use her hacking skills to disrupt the attackers' communications, buying them valuable time. Kazuo and Aiko positioned themselves to fend off the closest threats, their movements synchronized and precise. The cloaked figures were skilled, but Maria and her team were not easily intimidated. Kazuo, with his background in artifact protection, used his knowledge to anticipate the attackers' moves. He deflected blows and struck back with expert precision. Aiko, with her agility and sharp reflexes, engaged multiple attackers, her determination unwavering. Maria herself was a force to be reckoned with. Her focus was on the enigmatic leader, the figure whose voice she recognized from the encrypted messages. The leader's eyes were cold and calculating, their presence commanding. The pendant, safely clutched in Maria's hand, seemed to glow more intensely in the midst of the chaos. As the fight raged on, Mia managed to hack into the attackers' communication network, intercepting messages and exposing their plans. Through the static-filled channel, she overheard crucial information. The artifact is crucial, one of the attackers said. It's the key to unlocking a power that could shift the balance of power. The revelation sent a shiver down Maria's spine. The pendant was more than just an artifact. It was a key to something far more dangerous. She knew that they had to protect it at all costs. Despite their efforts, the attackers were formidable. The leaders seemed to anticipate every move Maria made, their confrontations becoming increasingly intense. The leader's voice, when they spoke, was filled with malice. You're out of your depth, Maria, this pendant is only the beginning. The real power lies beyond your grasp. Maria's determination grew fiercer. She had come too far and lost too much to let the pendant fall into the wrong hands. She engaged the leader in a fierce duel, their clash echoing through the monastery's stone corridors. The leader's skill was undeniable, but Maria's resolve and tactical prowess gave her an edge. In a final, decisive move, Maria managed to disarm the leader, the pendant nearly slipping from their grasp. With a swift motion, she secured the pendant and signaled to her team, "We need to get out of here, now." Carter, Aiko, and Kazuo covered their retreat as they made their way out of the monastery. The team's experience and coordination allowed them to push through, their objective clear: protect the pendant and ensure their escape. As they reached the base of the mountain, Maria took a moment to catch her breath. The pendant was safe, but the danger was far from over. They needed to analyze its power and understand its true significance. Had become a battleground, and their fight was far from finished. Back at their base, Maria and her team gathered to assess their next steps. Mia had managed to retrieve some information from the attackers' communications, hinting at a larger conspiracy. The pendant, they discovered, was part of a series of artifacts that, when united, could unlock an ancient power. Kazuo, examining the pendant closely, noted its unique inscriptions. "This is more than just a relic. It's a key to a much larger mystery. We need to uncover the full extent of its power and the true nature of the danger it represents." Aiko, ever vigilant, added, "We should also focus on finding out who else is after these artifacts. The leader we faced was just a part of a bigger organization. We need to understand their motives and prevent them from achieving their goals." Maria nodded, her mind already racing with plans. "We've faced immense challenges, but we've also gained valuable insight. Our next move is critical. We need to stay one step ahead of our adversaries and be prepared for whatever comes next." As the team prepared for their next mission, they knew that their journey was far from over. The dragon's legacy was a burden, but it was also a call to action. They were not just protecting artifacts, they were fighting to prevent a catastrophe that could reshape the world. The night was quiet, but the shadows of the past and future loomed large. Maria and her team, though weary, were resolute. They would continue their fight, driven by a sense of duty and a shared determination to uncover the truth and safeguard the world from the darkness that sought to consume it. Their next destination awaited, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest to protect the legacy of the dragon and ensure that its power remained out of the wrong hands.